I thought it was going to be just like Michigan. Georgia just barely beat Ohio State, and Michigan killed Ohio State. We were going to shock Georgia too. But the team that got off the bus wasn't the same team that played Ohio State. They beat the brakes off us. That was Texas Christian linebacker Johnny Hodges. That's what he said to Bryce Wilson on, you know, a YouTube interview during a YouTube interview not that long ago. I guess it was posted on the 30th, so on Monday. And I thought some revealing information there from Hodges, who was probably being was saying what the truth was at the time. TCU thought that they could shock Georgia. The problem was they were not in the same universe as Georgia. I mean, I'm not like rubbing it in or anything like that, but um, so often in sports we see there's everybody wants to figure out how to win. They want to often they try to figure out how to be the underdog and win. And TCU was legitimately an underdog in this game. I mean, they were what was it for almost two touchdown underdog. They lost by the largest margin in bowl game history. They belonged there, but they had no business being on the same field with Georgia, and that was evident after the first quarter. Um, Georgia escaped the Ohio State game, and that game won them the national championship. And I think that this insight was really good to hear from the TCU linebacker because I did not get the feeling that Sonny Dykes thought TCU would win the game at all. I did not get that feeling. Now, what feeling I get is irrelevant, right? I mean, the guys get to go out there and play, they get to go out there and coach. But there was no point in time where I was like, oh, man, this is a confident TCU team. I didn't feel that in Los Angeles. Let me just say this real quick too. The difference between the Ohio State Georgia game and the TCU Georgia game in terms of coverage is pretty significant. With Georgia TCU, we had two media availabilities. One was for an hour and it was the whole team, the other were both of the head coaches. With Georgia Ohio State, that was a whole week. You were there the entire time. I mean, it was a bowl game. That wasn't the case with Ohio State, with TCU Georgia. You couldn't get a real great feel, and you didn't need a great feel. There was no time. Y'all can go back and watch the videos. There was no time at which I was like, "Yeah, Georgia better watch it." No, I mean, probably said, I mean, in sports something crazy can happen, but there was. I mean, when you're a 14-point dog, the likelihood of you winning a game is like in the 15-20% range. It's very low. And TCU, it's not that they weren't prepared, they just weren't the better team. And in sports, that matters a lot. And I think what Hodges said, it's good to hear people be honest. He got, I mean, this is my words, he got caught up in the moment. He thought that because the law of transient properties exists, that just because X happened, that Y will happen because of X. That's not how it works. I mean, okay, let's go backwards to the 2019 Georgia Carolina game. I mean, South Carolina beat Georgia. How did that? I mean, like, what in the world? And then everybody else beat South Carolina, and nobody else beat Georgia except LSU. So that's not how it works. And anybody who's playing college football should know that. But that's the danger of playing the underdog role. Okay. And I'm going to talk about that in the future. That's the danger of playing the underdog role. TCU was a legitimate underdog, and they won their game. Cinderella got to the ball. But Georgia took those glass slippers and threw them on the ground and broke them and shattered them into pieces. Cinderella wasn't making that her ride home. It wasn't happening. You can read about the TCU game and Double Dogs. It's our look at Georgia's championship season in 2022. I'd encourage you to get it today. Make sure that you're getting it so that you'll get the book as soon as possible. You can't just get this book anywhere. Pick up the link. It's down below. I'm appreciative of everybody who's ordered. Those books will get out to you in late November, early March. Late November, early March. The earlier that I said November, late February, early March. The earlier you ordered, the earlier that you're going to get the book. So order today. But I think that with TCU, the just first of all, and I finished writing about TCU earlier today. Um, there was just no scenario opposite Georgia really imploding that I thought TCU could win that game. And that big shot early in the game helped the Horned Frogs a lot. I mean, it kept them in the game to me for way longer. I mean, that game could have been over quickly, very quick, like within 10 minutes of the game kicking, but it wasn't. It was just so evident that Georgia could end that game in the first quarter, and they did. When you look at national championships, what happens in those games? Like Florida got their brains beaten in 1995, okay, against Nebraska. But I mean, even that game wasn't as nasty as this TCU game because I think Florida Nebraska was still halfway, competitive at the half at least. Well, I mean, not really, 35-10. So that was pretty nasty as well. But Florida was winning that game 10-6. Florida was winning that game 10-6 in the first quarter. There was no time at which TCU was beating Georgia. No time. It didn't exist. They were tied. There was moments in that game where they were tied, but you could feel it in the first quarter that Georgia could end that game right then. And it wasn't the whole first quarter. It took Georgia a quarter, and I would say a quarter and a drive. Um, which the drive ended in the first minute of the second quarter, and that put Georgia up, I think, 20. No, just put them up 24-7, but that was enough because here's what Georgia did. They went touchdown. Listen to this. They went touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 halftime. Okay, so they were 30 something to 7 at the half. 3 and out. Touchdown, 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 kneel down. I think it was a kneel down. I mean, Georgia scored a touchdown on every opportunity they had the ball except 3. And one of those was a kneel down. One of those was a field goal. One of those was a 3 and out. They thoroughly dominated TCU in every single way. And the global point here is not rubbing TCU's face in the dirt. That's irrelevant. That does not matter. It's that, and I was writing about this in Double Dogs earlier today about Kirby's ability to really play well, get Georgia to play really well in big games. He is 17-7 as the head coach at Georgia against top 10 teams. That's more wins in 7 years than Mark Richt had in 15 and Vince Dooley had in 25 against top 10 teams. Now, Mark and Vince, they were some pretty good coaches, y'all. Those guys were legit. This guy's done it in 7 years. So when I discuss biggest coaches of all time and all this stuff, there's not a lot of people that can compare with that particular record. How many people have won 2 national championships in their first 7 years? It wasn't Dabo. I mean, Dabo started. Just check the record on things. Um, you know, his closest peer in terms of national championships is either Dabo or Nick Saban. So in his first 9 years, Dabo went 4-3, 9-5, 6-7, 10-4, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3. That was his first 7 years. They had one AP top 10 season. This guy has ripped through the league and won 2 national championships and 2 conference championships. And what he's doing is he's getting Georgia to play at its absolute best level that it can in big moments. Doesn't always win them, but they play their best games when the most is on the line. And I think that matters because if you look back at the teams that they played that they've lost to, and this is just going off the top of my head, okay, it's going to be in double dogs. But, they've lost to Alabama in 3 of those times. One was for a national championship, one was for an SEC championship, and one was in Tuscaloosa. They lost to Joe Burrow and company. They lost to Auburn in 2017, and of course won that game later. They lost to Florida in 20, and they had another loss somewhere along the way. I can't remember who it was to, but that's who they've lost to. There's no bad loss in there. I mean, the SEC championship in 21 is the worst loss if you want to call it that. But TCU, I'm not saying TCU didn't have a chance. They did, of course. But when he said, I thought it was going to be like just like Michigan. Georgia barely beat Michigan, and Michigan killed Ohio State. We were going to shock them too. Didn't happen, and it didn't happen not because of TCU. It didn't happen because they were playing Georgia. That was the problem.